Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another video here on the SSA Philosophy channel, where we dive right on into the philosophy of characters from video games to TV shows to movies, etc., etc. So, of course, in today's video, we are going to be going over the philosophy of the character known as Tony Montana. So, of course, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as always, let us not waste any more time. Let us go on ahead and let's get started. So, in the sweltering heat of the 1980s, Miami, amidst the neon lights and the cocaine filled dreams, rises Tony Montana, a character etched in cinematic history. So, pretty much Al Pacino's iconic portrayal and Brian De Palma's Scarface. Really, he's more than just a gangster, but really, he's a very complex tapestry woven from ambition, ruthlessness, and a twisted sense of the American dream. So Tony arrives on American shores not as a wide eyed immigrant, but really as a force of nature because he claws his way out of the Mariel boat lift. Pretty much which is a mass exodus of Cubans, fleeing Fidel Castro's regime. And unlike others seeking refuge, Tony isn't really content with a life of, menial labor, but really the scars that are etched, on his face, both physical and metaphorical, really hint at a violent past, a past that he readily employs in exchange for a green card. So really he becomes a pawn in a high stakes game, eliminating a political a descendant, pretty much a dissident, for a chance at a new life. But the thing about it, but the thing about this though is that freedom, for Tony, really it isn't about safety or comfort, but really it's about power. Simply that, simply just about power. Now, Miami, pretty much a city that is awash in drugs and decadence, pretty much becomes his hunting ground. One that is filled by a potent cocktail of cocaine and ambition. He works his way up, pretty much he works his way up the criminal ladder because he's a shark, circling the bloodstained waters of the drug trade, a predator with ferocious hunger, for success. And of course, his loyalty lies within, pretty much with himself and his closest friend, Manny Ray Rivera, a fellow Cuban exile struggling to navigate the treacherous underworld alongside him. Now, Tony's rise is meteoric because he possesses a street smart cunning, a ruthless determination, and a volatile temper. So, really, he surrounds himself with muscle, his own personal, Praetorian guard, and eliminates anyone who stands in his way. So, really, the line between ruthless businessman and bloodthirsty tyrant blurs as his empire expands. So really, he builds a gaudy mansion, a monument to his ill-gotten gains, a place where excess reigns supreme. But however, though, beneath that bravado and the mountains of cocaine, there's really a gnawing insecurity because Tony craves respect, which is, a twisted yearning for a place in the American dream that he so desperately pretty much that he so desperately desires. So really, he wants to be more than a Scarface thug, but yet his violent methods and insatiable greed push him further into the abyss. So really, he distrusts everyone, even those closest to him, and this paranoia pretty much fills a self-destructive spiral. So Tony Montana, really, he's a very tragic figure, a man who confuses wealth with achievement, because really he embodies the dark side of ambition, the hollowness of a life built on violence and excess. Now, Scarface, really overall, I would say is really it's not just a gangster movie, but really, and I'm pretty sure you've heard me say this a lot of times, but really, it's just that it's a cautionary tale. Really, it's a cautionary tale of a man that is consumed, by his own desires. A man who built an empire only to watch it crumble under the weight of his own sins. So, really, with the brief introduction out the way, we're gonna go on and dive into the philosophy of Tony Montana, and this is what I like to call the Scarface Manifesto. The world is yours for a price. Now, when it comes to diving right on into the first part of his philosophy, we're going to focus on this first part, which is the hunger for power. First, you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. Now, this mantra really isn't just about wealth, but it's about control. Because he craves, dominance over his circumstances, his world, and eventually himself. So really in the glittering chaos of Miami, Tony saw a world, ripe for the taking. The pastel mansions and the cocaine-filled parties really were really they were a mirage, masking a brutal underbelly where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. Now Tony, a man forged in the fires of revolution, wasn't really afraid to get his hands dirty. Power that he knew, wasn't really handed out like free samples at a nightclub, but it had to be wrestled from the grasp of those who already held it. A prize secured with blood, sweat, and maybe a good bullet or two. Now, this part of his philosophy, really, it was as simple as it was brutal. Pretty much take what you want by any means necessary. So the thing is that for him, morality was a luxury for the weak. A fairy tale. For those content with mediocrity. Because see, Tony, he craved an empire, pretty much an empire, like a throne built on mountains of cocaine and a ruthless efficiency, that would, leave his rivals trembling. And really, this hunger for power, it wasn't really born out of a desire for wealth or a lavish lifestyle, but really, it was a primal urge, a fire burning in his gut that craved control. And really, in a world that had chewed him up and spat him out, he still refused to be a pawn, because really, he would be the king, the one who dictated the rules, the one who bathed in the power that others only dreamed of. But the path, though, to the top was paved with thorns. Because, see, Miami was a viper's nest of ruthless gangsters, each with their own slice of the pie and a trigger finger itchy with suspicion. So Tony wasn't really naive, because he knew that there would be blood spilled, alliances forged and broken before he can claim his prize. So really, this wasn't really a game for the faint of heart, but really it was a war, a brutal ballet of violence and cunning. So Tony, however, though, he wasn't really afraid to dance. So really, Tony, like he was a predator, a shark in a feeding frenzy, and he wouldn't stop until the world was his for the taking. And also another part we want to really focus right on into is the immortality of moderation. So in this country, you got to make the money first. Then, when you got the money, you can say what you want. But for Tony, morality is a luxury for the powerless. Success justifies the means, no matter how ruthless. So, moderation. Now, moderation was for those who settled for mediocrity, who sipped at life from a thimble. Tony craved the whole damn gallon, snorting it, shooting it, living it all at a white hot pace. And really the thrill of the deal, the icy clink of, cold cash, the way fear danced in the eyes of his enemies. That was pretty much the feel that kept him going. You know, they called him ruthless, they called him barbaric. But Tony Montana, really, he wasn't a villain in a morality play, but really, he was a man who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back, winking. And really, in the jungles of Cuba, he really learned that moderation was the path, to the grave. Because you survived by taking what you wanted, by leaving your mark on the world with the ferocity, of a hurricane. And the thing is, it's like back in the States, the land of milk and honey. Tony saw the same weakness, masquerading, pretty much masquerading as a virtue. Moderation kept people complacent, content with their scraps while the real feast was there for the taking. And really, that was the thing. The world was a jungle, and Tony Montana was the lion, not the timid gazelle, nibbling at the edges. So, of course, there were, like, say, those who preached moderation, their voices dripping with, sanctimony. They spoke of balance, of finding the middle ground. But really, to Tony, that middle ground was nothing but purgatory, because he wasn't interested in lukewarm existence, but really he craved the inferno, the roar of the flames that burned so bright they cast long shadows. So really moderation, moderation was a betrayal of his instincts, his hunger and his very essence. So the thing about Tony Montana is that he wasn't really built for moderation, but really he was built for excess, for pushing boundaries, for living life on the razor's edge, you know, and as he took another drag of his cigar, the embers glowing, defiance in the twilight, he knew that his life would be glorious. It would be like a glorious, spectacular flame, that would burn out long before its time, but a life lived in moderation. That was a fate worse than death. And also another part we want to cover on into this philosophy of Tony Montana is something I like to call the cult of Scarface. So, say hello to my little friend. Of course, everybody already knows that line, of course, immediately. When you think about Scarface, you definitely overall can think of this line being one of them. Say hello to my little friend. Yeah, I'm probably not saying it all together like the right way. I mean, I wish I can, but my voice is a little down today. I'm not sick or anything, but just a little, kind of like low down today. But the thing about this though is that Tony's violence, his violence becomes really a twisted form of self-expression because he revels in the power and fear that his brutality evokes. So really in Tony's world, morality, as I said before, really it's a luxury, but pretty much in this case, morality is a luxury that the powerful, can't afford because he understands that power, and not virtue, guarantees survival because he builds his empire, yeah, really, I mean, really he builds his empire, through violence and intimidation, showing no mercy to those who stand in his way. So Scarface really isn't interested, in building a legitimate business, but really he wants to be the king. In his eyes, the only way to top, pretty much the only way to the top is paved with blood. And then Tony, like I said, because Tony, really Tony, I mean, he really embodies. So, not only does he embody the dark side of ambition, but he also embodies the dark side of the American dream because he comes to America with nothing and he builds a vast fortune. However, though, his methods are far from conventional because really what I would say he does is that he exploits the very system that promises opportunity, using its freedoms as a shield for his criminal activities. And Scarface, pretty much I would say Scarface, because really it represents the warped perception that achieving the American dream justifies any means necessary. And then, in Tony's world, his world is built on a twisted sense of loyalty because he considers say his close associates, say Manny and even Omar, say for a little bit of time, or in this case, if you want to say his friend Angel, who also had died early in the movie at the hotel, of course, pretty much considered them say to be family in a sense, Yet really when they were yeah, but pretty much, when their usefulness wanes or their actions, threaten his empire, he discards say, pretty much he discards them without hesitation, because really this chilling pragmatism, it pretty much underscores the ruthlessness, at the heart of Scarface's philosophy. And really in Scarface's world, moderation is weakness because he flaunts his wealth through extravagant mansions, expensive cars, and mountains of cocaine. And this gaudy display of excess really it serves a purpose because it's a symbol of his power, a way to intimidate the rivals and impress potential allies. So really the thing about Scarface, Scarface thrives on the violence. And the thing about Tony is that he views it as a necessary tool to maintain control and eliminate threats. However, though, this constant violence, it pretty much it begets, more violence, trapping Tony in a bloody cycle with no easy escape. Because the lavish lifestyle so pretty much the lavish, the lavish lifestyle that he's built rests on a foundation of violence and really a dark truth that will eventually come crashing down. So really the code of Scarface, really it is a very say seductive yet dangerous part of his philosophy because it glamorizes violence, it exalts ruthlessness, and really it confuses success with wealth. Yet beneath the glitz and the power, lie, pretty much the power, it struggles, pretty much the power struggles lies a cautionary tale because Tony, he may achieve his version of the American dream, but it ultimately leads to his downfall. The question that lingers on is whether the allure of power is worth the price that he pays. And also another part I want to focus on into Tony Montana's philosophy is the American dream on steroids. So all I have in this world is my balls and my word. and I don't break them for no man. So really, Tony, like like I said before, like he embodies like a warped, like dark version of the American dream because he craves the wealth, he craves status, and the freedom to live by his own brutal code. So really, in this case, I mean, like this wasn't like say the America, that Tony's parents had envisioned, when they fled Castro's revolution. But in this case, this wasn't like say the land of opportunity, where hard work, paved the way to a picket fence and a two-car garage. So really, this America, it was snorting cocaine off diamond-encrusted mirrors and mansion parties, a land where ambition cuddled into ruthlessness, and the streets were paved with blood and Bolivian marching powder. So really, Tony, like he saw the cracks in the American dream, the hollowness beneath the veneer, and really, it was a game, rigged for those already at the top. A system that chewed up immigrants like him and spat them out empty and disillusioned. But Tony wasn't built for disillusionment, but really he was built for survival. And his hunger, sharpened by years of hardship. His morality tempered, by the brutal realities of the streets. So really his rise was meteoric, from muscle for a low level drug lord to a kingpin in his own right. Tony clawed his way to the top, each scar which was like a testament, to his ambition. And each ruthless act, a brick in the twisted, pretty much a brick in the twisted monument that he was building, like money, power and respect. Really these were like, the new gods of his American dream. A pantheon built on violence and, filled by an insatiable desire. But really the American dream, really even in its twisted version, it comes with a price. Because paradise turns sour. The mansion, feels like a gilded cage. And paranoia becomes like a constant companion, that shadows crawling, pretty much, pretty much a constant companion where, the shadows crawling with enemies. And the mountains of cocaine only amplify the emptiness, a hollowness that no amount of money or power can even fill. So really, Tony Montana, really he embodies, the seductive allure of wealth and power, the intoxicating promise of a life unbound by limitations. But really, he also lays bare the nightmarish underbelly, the hollowness of a life built on violence and excess. So really, his story is a testament to the fact that some dreams are best left shattered. For the American dream, even in its most twisted form, cannot survive on ambition alone. And also, another part I want to focus on into Tony Montana's philosophy really is the Paranoia Paradox. So, friends are like clothes, you outgrow them. So, the thing about Tony is that, Tony, he trusts no one. Tony overall is like a product, a product of his own, like pretty much a product of his rise, through the criminal underworld. And this isolation, really, it fuels his paranoia, ultimately leading, to his downfall. And the thing about this is, though, the irony wasn't lost on Tony because he was surrounded by paranoia, a constant low hum beneath the Miami bass beats. Like every deal, every handshake, felt like a potential betrayal. Yet, yet to survive, in this cutthroat world, I mean, he had to build an empire in his own image, ruthless, suspicious, and ever vigilant. So really, the very world that he was conquering, the world that promised him the riches, riches and a mountain of white gold, was the same world that filled his distrust. Every friend, every associate became a potential enemy. Their smiles, a mask hiding a blade, and really his ascent, like I said before, like his ascent was meteoric. Like it was very meteoric in the movie, because his street smarts and the ruthless efficiency, caught the eye of Sosa, another kingpin, pretty much a Bolivian drug lord, a man as elusive as a phantom. But really, with each victory, the paranoia deepened. Was Sosa testing him? Was his right hand man like say Omar, plotting a coup? Like even Manny, Manny, his closest like confidant, became suspect because every whispered conversation, every late night phone call, filled Tony's insecurities, and really the walls of his opulent mansion adorned with the gaudy gold and mirrors. Really, it became a prison, a prison of his own making. And the mountains of cocaine that brought him wealth also filled a constant, like, say, state of hyper awareness because he slept with a loaded gun under his pillow, his eyes scanning the shadows for unseen threats. So, really, in this paranoia, a twisted logic emerged. Violence became a preemptive strike, a way to purge the doubt. Every perceived slight demanded retribution, a brutal show of force to maintain his dominance. But really, with each act of violence, the trust around him eroded further. The paranoia became a self fulfilling prophecy, driving a wedge between Tony and those that he claimed to be closest to. So, really, the thing is, was this paranoia a necessary evil, the price of survival in the cocaine jungle, or was it a symptom of a deeper rot, a gnawing sense of emptiness that no amount of wealth or power could satiate? So, really, as Tony climbed higher, the question loomed large. Could a man so consumed by distrust ever truly possess the world that he craved? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that overall is really that is the conclusion of this video here today. But overall, Tony Montana's story pretty much it concludes in a bloody ballet of violence, a tragic counterpoint to his initial ambition. So really having clawed his way to the top of Miami's drug scene, Tony achieved the extravagant lifestyle that he craved. Yes, he did achieve that. A sprawling mansion, a beautiful wife, and seemingly limitless power. However, though, his ruthless ascent came at a terrible cost. So really Tony's paranoia, really it was filled by his violent past and relentless pursuit of power. Like really it began to consume him because he alienated his own best friend Manny, suspecting betrayal at every turn, and really his possessiveness towards his sister Gina, pretty much it warped into like a suffocating control. So really the ruthless efficiency that made him a successful criminal became a self-destructive force, pushing away those who cared for him. So and really the turning point, pretty much the turning point came when Tony, pressured, by his supplier Sosa, pretty much agreed to a risky assassination attempt. The fallout was devastating. The mission failed, and of course, severing Tony's fragile trust with Sosa. So really, in a cocaine-filled rage, he murdered his best friend Manny, mistaking his loyalty for betrayal. And really, this act, filled by paranoia and misplaced anger, really it severed the last thread of humanity that tethered him. So really alone and desperate, Tony would, pretty much Tony he retreated into his opulent prison, a mansion filled with luxury, but really devoid of genuine connection. And really his world, once vibrant with ambition, became a cage of paranoia and regrets. And also, and really the symbolic tiger, the tiger that that Tony, in the movie kept as a pet. Really, I would say that the symbolism, like say with Tony, and the tiger, I would say that the tiger is a reflection of his own ferocity. Now paced restlessly, pretty much mirroring Tony's inner turmoil. So really, the inevitable arrived in the form of Sosa's assassins. Cornered in his mansion, Tony's bravado, once a source of strength, pretty much it morphed into a pathetic cry, for respect. So blinded by his ego, he didn't see the hidden gunman behind him. So really, his final moments were a chaotic flurry of gunfire, of violent end that mirrored the brutality of his rise. So really, as Tony, as his body falls into the pool, the camera pans to the inscription on his globe, saying, "The world is yours." And really, I would say that this is a cruel irony. A cruel irony, that hangs heavy in the air because Tony had achieved his dream of power and wealth, but it came at the cost of everything that truly mattered to him. So really his story, once again, of course, it served as really it serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that the ruthless pursuit of power often leads to a hollow victory and a lonely demise. And ladies and gentlemen, that of course is the end of this video here today. So of course, if you stayed this far to watch the video, once again, I appreciate you. I appreciate it. I thank you also, of course, 100%. I really do. I really appreciate that. So of course, don't forget to like, to comment, and subscribe for more explorations into the minds of your favorite characters. So of course, and also hit the notification bell as well too to stay updated on my latest videos. So with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. So overall, I hope you all have a very beautiful, blessed, and wonderful day. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, always remember to always be smooth, to always be steady, and to always be aggressive. Peace.